One of the biggest gripes about city skylines too right now is how difficult building an authentic European city can be. At least we have the temporary map, right? My community wanted a city skylines 2 European inspired build, and while I started planning a European city in game, I became concerned by the pedestrian roads within the game, vital to a European city, and how petrol stations would spawn on them, and how the game lacked realistic European assets at the time of this video's release. But as a non-European, not really wanting to build a typical American city, I have decided it might be best to embark upon a quest of understanding what makes Europe first, but from an academic urban planning angle. So I embarked upon some desktop research using Google Scholar, and I turned to some very respectable European urban planners so I can build a better Europe. Here is what I found out about Europe, and if you plan on embarking upon a European inspired city, you may find this video useful. A quick footnote: I have used some City Skylines 1 and 2 footage as well as graphs, photos and other videos. The phrase European city is commonly used and carries positive, appealing associations. However, it lacks a clear and precise definition, functioning more as a metaphor. It serves both as an analytical category in comparison to other city types and as a guiding principle in urban planning. The term encompasses morphological, social, historical, ethnic, and cultural dimensions at both levels. Different people interpret the label European city in various ways. Preservationists see it as the conservation of historic buildings, urban planners view it as the compact Wilhelminium city, humanists focus on the relationship between private and public spaces. Historians consider it in terms of history and traditions, geographers examine its structural types, and the legal profession relates it to legal systems and the legitimacy of power. Given the diversity of European cities and the ambiguity of Europe's borders, arriving at a substantive definition is challenging. Geographic demarcation is problematic, requiring distinctions between geographical, cultural, and political definitions of Europe. Even positive aspects of individual cities are selectively included in such definitions. Braunfels describes Europe as a continent of city characters, emphasizing the diversity of European cities. Post-socialist transformations in Eastern Europe since 1989 have added complexity. A pan-European perspective is challenging, requiring the inclusion of Eastern and Southern Europe, as well as cities of different sizes on the periphery, which have been understudied. There are comparative studies that contrast European cities with North American cities, though elements of both can be found in European cities, like Germany. The assumed Europeanness overlooks significant differences between continental European cities and English cities, where suburbanization began earlier and was far more extensive. The historical aspect of the European city is vague, often referring to Central European towns without specifying the time frame. Cities have longevity with transformations and diversity, but terms like pre-industrial, industrial, and post-industrial cities may offer greater differentiation. Other definitions based on dominant economic systems distinguish between industrial cities, seaports, mining towns, spa towns, and capital cities. Using the term European city without careful consideration implies excessive importance, restorative concepts, and fears of loss. It cultivates a glorifying retrogressive myth of a social utopia based on shared characteristics and structural similarities, but often neglects the relevant differences and diversities of each European place. Towards the end of the last millennium, the concept of the European city gained prominence and has become a dominant idea in conferences, programs, and urban policies. It signifies a departure from functionalist modernity and a revisiting of proven spatial structures with social implications. The focus is on conserving historical townscapes, reflecting changing standards and contemporary objectives. The rediscovery of the past, with an emphasis on preserving uniqueness, has led to a shift in what is considered an ideal city. The Wilhelminium city is now esteemed, while post-World War I urban structures have fallen out of favour. The European city as a guiding principle involves a paradigm shift towards mixed-use neighbourhoods, conservation, gradual processes, dense urban structures, short distances, and a harmonious urban development. The reorientation aligns with the renaissance of inner cities and neighbourhoods close to city centres. The concept is now a planning objective without a specific definition, primarily referring to dense, compact and mixed-use urban structures resembling pre-World War I cities. It encompasses transformations of existing buildings, refurbishments of residential settlements, conversion projects and entirely new districts. As a response to criticisms of functional zone cities, the European city concept represents a common ground among urban planners and policymakers. However, this is applicably challenged by the growing importance of the urban regional level. The concept lacks consideration for urban disbursement and phenomena like urban sprawl. Recent trends favour densification and city-centred lifestyles globally, even if not explicably labelled as the European city. The European city model aims to guide urban planning and policy, emphasizing adaptability, durability, and resilience. It integrates new challenges, existing buildings, history, and combines continuity with flexibility. The approach involves procedural implementation and the engagement of civic groups. Common basic values, shared attitudes, mentalities, and a cultural heritage are inherent elements of the European city project. Urban planning, initially focused on expansion in the 19th century, aimed to bring order to growing cities. In the 20th century, the planning of shrinking cities became significant. Urban shrinkage, an undesired process, results from political and economic decisions. Shrinking cities pose economic, social, and cultural challenges, especially in old industrial regions facing economic decline and demographic changes. The decline is accompanied by falling revenue, international real estate influence, and diminishing local ties and cultural heritage. In Europe, city centres underwent redevelopment, creating new neighbourhoods around railway stations, villas and residential areas. These areas, planned with consideration for topographical features, became characteristic and influential parts of cities. Commemorative churches thrived in these districts, which often deviated from standardised block grids. The planning models incorporate diagonals, boulevards, and parks, forming distinct neighbourhoods with varied images and social stratification. Strict building regulations prevented informal urban growth. Planned infrastructures, minimum public services, and regulations for hygiene and safety were integral to urbanisation in Europe. Walter Seinfeld identified 5 characteristics that define the European city: differentiation, emancipation, urban lifestyle with a public-private plurality, centrality, and size and density, along with social state interventions. Citizens played a crucial role, expected to support urban culture and promote identification, social integration, mixing, and neighbourhood stability. However, the link between citizenship and property raised issues of displacement and exclusion in Europe. Before World War I, rapid immigration defined the European city. For migrants, the city symbolized an integration model and a chance to escape rural dependencies for better living conditions. The compact European city, with its housing options, was seen as more adaptable to social change than the monostructures of modern urban planning. Despite deregulation and neoliberal trends, European cities still remain elements of the welfare state at the municipal level, aiding immigrant integration. However, the current influx of refugees to Europe poses a new and challenging test to these dynamics. European cities hold a spectrum of possibilities, blending hopes and fears. Contrasted with North American cities, which are often associated with negative traits like urban sprawl, unpredictability, and ghettos, European cities also face similar global trends in the past. The cultural strength of European cities against neoliberal globalization processes and urban policies is uncertain. Historical core cities grapple with retail trends, the decline of small businesses, and the dominance of out-of-town shopping centres or retail parks. Current urban policies emphasizing concepts like intelligent cities or smart cities tend to overlook unique historical features, reinforcing homogenization. Normative principles and European planning laws may have diminishing impact compared to economic trends. The diminishing room for maneuver in urban planning is evident between global trends, EU influence, and options for local decision making. The model of the European city is both praised and questioned. Germany's urban development policy refers to it as a model for space, society and values. However, the balance sought between economic growth, sustainable development and historical preservation is a continual challenge. Europeans' inclination to seek historical centres distinguishes them, attracting admiration from non-European tourists. The EU recognises cities as crucial for sustainable development, but the European model of urban development is deemed at risk. Disparities between cities outweigh region or national differences. Despite EU influence, formal planning laws are still rooted in national legal codes, reflecting diverse historical traditions when it probably should be based at an EU level. The European identity faces challenges, with movements for de-evolution and independence potentially undermining a sense of togetherness. The history of European cities is rich with myths and symbols, contributing to their uniqueness. Despite challenges, the diversity of Europe is seen as its greatest strength, shaping and defining the distinctions of the European city. So let's look at 3 cities for a case study from 3 different urban planning models of Europe. Let's begin with Barcelona. Barcelona, in collaboration with the Urban Ecology Agency, introduced the innovative Superblocks project to tackle local challenges like air pollution, noise, traffic, road accidents, health issues, and a lack of green space. The initiative is aligned with the city's Citizen Commitment to Sustainability 2012 to 2022 agenda, emphasizing individual involvement in decision-making for a more livable and sustainable city. The Let's Fill It In with Street Life program prioritizes public space for people over vehicles, fostering public participation. The Climate Plan of 2018 to 2030 and the Barcelona Urban Mobility Plans of 13 to 18 and up to 2024 further endorse superblocks as a means to increase green space, reduce greenhouse emission gases, and promote positive communal relations. The Superblocks program transforms public space by prioritizing people, greenery, and human interaction, minimizing the space for roads and vehicles. These mini neighborhoods encourage leisure, sports, and social interaction, with vehicles restricted to outer perimeter roads. Initially tested in the Ploubnau neighborhood in 2015, the Superblocks concept proved successful, freeing up 75% of car-occupied areas for cycle lanes, benches, and community spaces. Barcelona has completed 6 superblocks with plans to develop 503 more citywide. While some criticism arose regarding inconveniences to drivers, residents generally welcomed the changes. Barriers such as insufficient funding and initial stakeholder engagement issues were addressed, emphasizing the importance of strong communication between planning authorities and residents. Public engagement during planning stages fosters a sense of ownership and attachment to areas, creating mutually acceptable visions for Barcelona. The transformative effects of the Superblocks initiative are evident, achieving emissions reductions, increased green space, improved air quality, and enhanced quality of life. The project, with its low cost and quick implementation, relies on effective dialogue between city authorities and residents for success. The results indicate potential economic savings and health benefits, positioning Barcelona as an attractive destination for business and tourism. The scalable nature of the initiative allows for application in new developments and regeneration projects, with the overall experience demonstrating the importance of overcoming initial opposition through strong engagement and tailored communication. So is this what Europe is? Green spaces? Is that what Europe is all about? One thing that can be said from Barcelona is that sense of community is what is often thriving across all of Europe, and Europe often is at the forefront of green spaces. Now let's look at our next city. We are now heading into Germany. According to Architects Daily, streamlining and efficiency is the key to Germany's success. In Germany, the initial planning focus is on comprehensive master plan areas known as B plans. Although obtaining approval for these plans is rigorous, once established they provide a fixed framework for the entire area's development. Adhering to these defined rules enables quicker planning approval for all upcoming development proposals. Responsibility. Unlike policies, planning regulations in Germany hold the status of law, referred to as BGB. Consequently, pre-application advice carries legal weight for the local planning authority, ensuring a sense of certainty. Giving Germany's economy emphasis on accountability and performance, it makes sense for councils to operate under similar principles. What Germany also does well is clarity. German development law transforms uncertainties into rule-based formulas. These formulas establish explicit guidelines for areas such as site coverage, building heights, maximum floor level on all levels, and distances to neighbouring property boundaries. Through pre-application procedures, you receive confirmation, providing a clear path forward for your development plans. So how can I implement this streamlining in City Skylines too? First, pretend your city has a planning office and a legal system that enforces planning regulations, but mostly a uniform approach for your city is what's needed. Another approach out of Germany is called new suburbanism. Could this be a useful model for City Skylines too, building Europe? Euro Altrock, no joke, that's his surname, has written a paper that outlines Germany's success into new suburbanism. The trajectory of industrial urbanization in Germany, spanning from the mid-19th to the mid-20th century, witnessed significant city growth driven by rural-urban migration, seeking opportunities in expanding manufacturing centers. This period laid the groundwork for a substantial proportion of tenant housing in major cities, as seen here, rendering residents susceptible to housing price increases. Post-World War I, the adoption of Fordist mass production principles for tenant housing, coupled with an inclination towards single-family homes, reshaped the peripheries of German cities. This transformation led to the decentralized settlement patterns, increased commuter distances, and a separation of job and housing areas. The decentralized model persisted due to waves of incorporations in the 1970s, providing central cities with enough land for development within their perimeters. Modernist urban design principles further emphasize functional separation, even in instances of autonomous new town developments. Early criticisms arose, focusing on the functional dependence of new settlements on historic cores, the surge in private traffic, and the lack of urban vitality and cultural amenities. Since the late 20th century, concerns also highlighted resource waste and the competition faced by traditional urban cores with the rise of suburban shopping centers. In other words, had Germany become like America? The scenario shifted significantly after the German reunification in 1990. Economic transformations, outsourcing of manufacturing facilities, and privatization trends left numerous industrial sites vacant, creating vast brownfield development opportunities. This shift allowed for a modified urban design approach, addressing earlier criticisms and giving rise to mixed-use inner-city neighborhoods. And it is in this video that a City Skylines 2 build will see this approach be implemented alongside other approaches of taking ex-industrial land, or in city planning jargon, a brownfield site, and doing what Germany has wonderfully done and turning it into a new greenfield housing development. So what's the difference between green and brownfield? Well, imagine you're building a new neighborhood from scratch on an empty field. That's a greenfield. It's like a blank canvas. Now imagine renovating an old industrial site into a trendy apartment complex. That's a brownfield. It's like giving a place a new life. Green is fresh, brown is makeover. This trend aligned with the federal government's sustainability strategy to reduce greenfield development, prompting many cities to promote brownfield and infield development. Factors such as the rise of service economies, changing household patterns, and an inclination towards urban lifestyles further diminish the demand for single-family homes. The mid-2000s marked the end of demographic stagnation or population losses in metro German areas, with immigration contributing to population gains. The subsequent trend of reurbanization led to soaring real estate prices, prompting major cities to implement ambitious housing development projects. However, brownfield and infill developments often only catered to affluent international demand that affected existing neighborhoods' livability and contributed to environmental concerns. As brownfield development opportunities dwindled, planners faced implementation barriers for housing development goals. The pressure to address housing crises and exploding prices compelled planners to reconsider greenfield sites, despite contradicting the national goal of reducing greenfield development. These greenfield developments within core cities, though labelled as suburban projects, became crucial in addressing regional housing challenges surrounding municipalities often resisting high-density development, leaving core cities to act independently to accelerate housing production, especially for affordable units. Germany is on a mission with major greenfield developments in 5 big cities. A northeast Berlin site takes into account the shrinkage of housing scale. For most Berliners, they are used to high density living. This new project is medium density with plenty of green space, with a ratio of 1 green meter per 1 apartment. In the picture you can see that all apartments include a large atrium style courtyard for communal activities, but also large plazas, as in you can see in pink, and plenty of gardens and walking trails. This new development also includes some office space and commercial, and it appears there is little room for cars. A new greenfield site in Berlin is being developed around a transit hub with 7,000 housing units ranging in scale from medium density around the transport area, then petering out to townhouses. But then a walking trail and a river cuts through the new development before small low-level density occurs, and then it's on to farmland. The best part is a wide walkable boulevard that extends from south to north through the heart of the transport hub. It is simple yet effective. The next development is on the western periphery of Munich. Once again, this new town is wedged in between 2 transit hubs with medium density that focuses on communal green space inside the apartment block. The edges and nodes are far more defined and less confusing here than in the older suburb over here. This obedience of clearly defined paths and nodes has purpose, and they serve as meeting points. Which one, A or B, do you find has greater orientation? If you saw my video here, you can learn all about how to spot nodes, paths, edges, landmarks and districts within a city. Here is the final German project that we are going to look at in Frankfurt, called Nordwest. It is a collection of 3 developments with a highway through the middle. There is great transport links, excellent green spaces, but while the edges are clear, they are trappings, creating defined districts and even sub-districts within these districts. Personally, I would not be emulating this design within City Skylines 2, but hey, Germany, you can't be efficient all the time, right? A viewer also sent in this image for Germany's transport, the S and U-Bahn layouts. We will definitely be talking more about these options as we progress through our city and this series. Let's turn to our final European city for ideas, and we should head over to England, the one country that most people know is European, but when asked to imagine Europe, they never conjure an English image. You may be asking why we are turning to England for urban planning ideas. To understand best practice, you need to see worst practice. Let's turn to this picture of Bradley Stoke in Bristol, which has suffered at the hands of 1977's Design Bulletin 32, or the DB32, which set out guidelines and standards for road layouts. Ultimately, it was made to steer England away from narrow streets and troublesome back alleyways to wider collector roads and giant roundabouts to try and accommodate the motor vehicle and low density housing, but it hasn't done what it was meant to do. The DB32 is now seen as the what not to do in urban planning, but today England still faces urban planning challenges of parking lot driven retail parks, housing estates with limited bus services, and tangled road networks throughout suburbs with little commercial, forcing thousands of workers to have long daily commutes. Some of the cumbersome rules set out in the DB32 included that all new estates should have a hierarchy of roads, or that houses could only front on to the most minor roads. Mix in rules about every house having 2 off-street parking spaces, privacy distances between windows, and the complex arrangements for ongoing maintenance, and hey presto, you've got yourself a cul-de-sac. So what is wrong with cul-de-sacs? I don't deny that many people like suburbs with cul-de-sacs, but it is undeniable that the UK suburb, a tree with cul-de-sacs branching off the stem, unconnected to each other, is just downright confusing, makes walking inconvenient and unpleasant, suffocates local businesses, and makes public transport unviable. So should we build cul-de-sacs within our European build? Yes, of course we should. They are quintessential to the Euro landscape, but maybe we should make some adjustments to improve modern day accessibility. But can we really blame city planners for this debacle? Not really, as England's urban landscape throughout the 1950s to the 1990s was never truly planned, rather it just happened, and it wasn't until the 2000s until England received the 2007 Manual for Streets that supported pedestrians and a human-scale design that things started to change. You might be thinking you can't build what is wrong with urban planning, but I say yes we can. We are not here to build the perfect European city in City Skylines with no problems. We are here to try and encapsulate what is Europe. So let's start our European build. With all the good and the bad. But the problem with City Skylines 2 is that the game forces you to be un-European and act like you're some sort of American settler, forcing you to build low residential first. I'm not buying into Colossal Order's strict milestones, so let's turn off Unlock All for now. I really like the German design out of Munich, so we will start with this idea. The idea of creating communal green space and networks behind medium density will be a vital part to our European-inspired city. So let's apply the appropriate city planning knowledge to this map and complete a site analysis. So as part of our site analysis, I have identified that there are farms scattered across the map already, and there are archaeological areas that need assessment. Our plan will be to negotiate with the farmers and work around them for now. And another thing that is frustrating me about City Skylines 2 is that we must start by building low residential single family dwellings, but this isn't entirely how a city starts. It's how a new suburb might begin in a pre-existing city, but not how a region would begin. Imagine a highway exit, all for a few scattered homes. That's what Colossal Order expect of us. So let's begin with a more appropriate road entrance for now, by downgrading the highway with an intersection, but as the city grows, we will definitely look at implementing off-ramps. Without mods, unique assets, and entirely in the base game vanilla, a European build following European modern urban planning is going to be very challenging indeed, maybe virtually impossible. But let's see how we go, and let's apply some creative thinking. Let's get building.